I had only been gone for a week. Just a simple trip out of town to clear my head and take a break from the usual routine. But the moment I pulled into my driveway, something felt off. The porch light was on, even though I clearly remembered turning it off. And then I saw movement through the front window. My heart dropped. Someone was inside my house. At first, I thought maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe a friend had stopped by to check on things like I'd asked. But as I got closer, I realized I didn't recognize the people lounging in my living room. There were bags, shoes, even toys scattered across the floor like they'd been living there for days. I couldn't believe it. I walked up, knocked on the door, and that's when things really took a turn. A woman opened it, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "Can I help you?" Like I was the intruder. I asked her who she was and what she was doing in my home, and without hesitation, she called out for her cousins. A whole group came into view, people I had never seen in my life. That's when I noticed her, Karen from the HOA board, stepping out from the hallway like she owned the place. Apparently, while I was gone, she decided it was perfectly okay to let her cousins house sit. Without telling me, no permission, no heads up, just moved them in. When I told her I was calling the police, she beat me to it. Karen, the HOA queen herself, dialed 911 and reported me, the actual homeowner, as a trespasser. I stood there in my own front yard, wondering how in the world I ended up in this situation. The cops were already on their way, and I had no clue how this was going to end. As I stood there trying to process what was happening, I kept asking myself the same question. How did this even start? I had double-checked everything before I left for my trip. Locked every door, turned off the lights, even had my security system armed. There was no way I left my house open. And yet, somehow, Karen had managed to get inside. Now, let me give you some background on Karen. If you live in a neighborhood with an HOA, chances are you've got someone like her. She's the kind of person who walks around with a clipboard, snapping pictures of your lawn if the grass is half an inch too long. Sends out warning letters for leaving your trash bins out a few minutes past pickup. Always knows everyone's business, or thinks she does. We've had a few awkward run-ins before, but I never imagined she'd cross a line like this. Apparently, sometime during the week I was away, Karen told people that I had left town indefinitely and that my house was vacant. According to one of her cousins, yes, I actually got one of them to talk a little, Karen told them it was fine to stay here temporarily, like she had the authority. She even had a spare key. I have no idea how she got it. Maybe from an old lockbox I forgot to remove. Or worse, maybe she had a copy made during one of those random HOA inspections. So here I am, standing in front of my own house while strangers make themselves at home inside. And now Karen's calling the police and telling them that I'm the intruder. I tried explaining to her, calmly at first, that I'm the legal owner and that no one had permission to be here. But she kept raising her voice, acting like she was protecting the neighborhood from some shady guy trying to break in. The thing is, she sounded convincing. Too convincing. And for a moment, I actually started to worry. What if the cops believed her? What if by the time they arrived, she had spun the whole story into something I couldn't undo? As I waited for the police to show up, I pulled out my phone and started recording. Not in a dramatic way, just quietly, for my own protection. I knew how fast things could spiral, and with Karen already twisting the story, I needed proof. She was pacing in front of the house, on the phone, acting like she was some kind of neighborhood watch hero. Her cousins, meanwhile, were peeking through the blinds like they were afraid I was going to rob the place. It was surreal. I've lived here for 5 years, paid every mortgage bill, every HOA fee, some of them directly to Karen herself. But somehow, because I was out of town for a week, she took that as an open invitation to hand over my home to her relatives. What bothered me the most, though, was how casual they all were about it. Like they truly believed they had a right to be there. One of the cousins even came outside, offered me a bottle of water and said, "We're only here till Sunday, man. No big deal." No big deal? I stood there stunned while my own house was being used like a free Airbnb. Then there was another twist. A neighbor I barely knew, Mr. Halpern, walked over from across the street. He looked confused and asked if everything was okay. I told him what was going on, and his face went pale. Turns out, Karen had told a few people on the block that I'd moved away for work and wasn't coming back. She made it sound official. No one questioned her. Why would they? She was on the HOA board, always nosy, always involved. But now, I was starting to see the bigger picture. This wasn't just about house-sitting. Karen had been laying the groundwork while I was gone, spinning a story that made this whole situation seem legit. The cops still hadn't arrived. Every second felt heavier, like I was sinking deeper into a mess I didn't even create. I couldn't stop wondering, was this something she had planned for a while? And if so, why? What did she really want? About 15 minutes later, I saw the flashing lights of a patrol car turning onto my street. My stomach sank. This was it, the moment where everything could either get sorted out or go completely sideways. I had all my ID ready, my house keys, my phone, with photos and documents proving I owned the place. But even with all that, I couldn't shake the feeling that things might not go in my favor. Karen immediately flagged the officer down like she'd been waiting to save the day. She started speaking fast, pointing at me, calling me a suspicious man who showed up unannounced. She said her cousins were in the house for safety reasons and that I had been aggressive. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The officer held up a hand, trying to calm her down, but she wouldn't stop talking. Meanwhile, I stood a few feet back, trying to stay calm, trying not to look even a little tense. Because I knew how this could look from the outside. Man shows up, says a group of people in the house are trespassing, but the group insists he's the problem. Finally, the officer walked over to me and asked for my ID. I handed it over without a word. I also showed him my mortgage app, utility bills with my name, and even a video clip from my Ring camera showing me locking the front door before my trip. He nodded but didn't say much. Then he asked the question I'd been dreading. "Do you have proof they aren't supposed to be here?" And that's when the real problem hit me. I didn't. There was no text, no email, no written message saying Karen had broken in. She didn't leave a note, didn't ask for permission. It was just her word against mine. Another officer showed up, and they both walked into the house to talk to the people inside. I could see Karen smirking slightly, arms crossed, like she'd already won. My own house was right there, filled with strangers and confusion, and for the first time I started to wonder, what if I couldn't get it back? As the officers stepped inside, I stayed on the sidewalk, trying to keep my cool while my entire life, my home, my belongings, my peace, hung in the balance. From where I stood, I could hear muffled voices inside. Karen's tone was all sweet and helpful, like she was doing some kind of community service. Her cousins sounded confused but cooperative, like they genuinely didn't realize they were part of something shady. Then, out of nowhere, one of the officers stepped back outside and called me over. I followed him to the porch, heart pounding. And that's when he asked something I never expected. "Do you know a man named Daniel Thompson?" At first, the name didn't ring a bell, but then it hit me. Daniel was the guy I hired months ago to do some minor repairs around the house. He had access to a spare key for just a couple of days while he worked. I thought I'd collected it afterward, but now I wasn't so sure. Turns out, Daniel is Karen's nephew. The officer told me one of the cousins mentioned Daniel had given them the key, said the house was available for family to stay in temporarily. My jaw dropped. So this wasn't just Karen acting on a whim. This was planned. whether she manipulated her nephew into helping her or the two of them had cooked. This up together I couldn't tell. But suddenly her access made sense. And that meant this wasn't just a misunderstanding. It was a calculated move. I felt a wave of panic. If Daniel had made himself look like someone authorized to be in my home, and if Karen supported that, with her usual HOA authority vibe, would that be enough to convince the cops this wasn't a crime? Inside, the officers were now looking around, asking questions, trying to figure out what to do next. I could see one of them holding something up, papers maybe. And that's when I saw Karen's face change. Just for a second, her expression dropped. She looked nervous, and in that moment, I knew there was something deeper going on, something none of them wanted me to find. As I watched Karen's face shift from smug to tense, I knew something was unraveling, and fast. The officers came back outside, one of them holding what looked like a printed lease agreement. My heart dropped again. Had Karen gone so far as to fake documents? He asked me calmly. Sir, do you recognize this rental contract? I took the paper from him and scanned it. The name at the top wasn't mine. It was Daniel Thompson. The address was correct, but everything else looked off. The signature line was blank, and the dates didn't make sense. It said the rental started 3 days before I even left town. The officer raised an eyebrow and said, "Looks like someone tried to make this look official but didn't finish the job." That's when Karen stepped in, trying to explain it away, saying Daniel told her I had agreed to sublet the house, that he was handling it. And she claimed she was only helping out family and didn't realize I wasn't involved. But her voice was shaky now, not nearly as confident. I told the officers I had never rented my house, never agreed to anything, and that the key Daniel had was temporary and should have been returned months ago. The officers took a long pause, then they turned back toward the house and asked everyone inside to step out. One by one, Karen's cousins came outside, carrying bags, looking uncomfortable, some even apologizing to me under their breath. Karen stood there frozen, clutching her phone, watching the plan fall apart. Just as I thought it was over, one of the officers walked back to me with a small black notebook they had found inside, tucked away in the hallway closet. It had handwritten notes, lists, dates, even sketches of my floor plan, pages and pages of it. Karen's name was written on the inside cover. I stared at it, speechless. She hadn't just let them stay in my house. She'd been watching, planning, maybe even waiting for the right moment to claim it. The officer looked at me and said, "Looks like this wasn't just a misunderstanding after all." That's when I realized this wasn't about house sitting. It was something bigger. And it might not be over yet. After the officers reviewed everything, the fake rental agreement, the notebook, and my proof of ownership, they told Karen's cousins they had to leave the property immediately. Thankfully, most of them were respectful and left without much argument. They genuinely seemed like they'd been misled by Karen and Daniel. One of them even apologized again as they loaded up their car, saying they had no idea the house wasn't actually being rented. Karen, on the other hand, wasn't so lucky. The officers took her aside and had a long conversation that ended with her being escorted to the back of the patrol car. They said it would be up to the DA to decide what charges to file, but based on the forged documents and her role in the whole setup, it didn't look good for her. As for Daniel, he wasn't there that day, but I filed a report, and the investigation into how he got the key and what he told Karen is still ongoing. After everyone was gone, I walked through my house. Everything felt strange. Some furniture had been moved, a few things were out of place, but thankfully nothing was stolen or damaged. Still, the feeling that someone had invaded my space, that trust was broken, was hard to shake. I changed the locks the same day, got the security system updated, and I've started documenting everything with the HOA, just in case this ever comes up again. If there's one thing I've learned from this, it's that you can never be too careful, even in your own neighborhood. And just because someone acts like they're in charge, doesn't mean they have the right to your property. So, yeah, I came. Home early from a trip expecting peace and quiet, and ended up uncovering a full-blown scheme. Welcome home, right?